In this lecture, we'll see how to create variables in the Python. So first of all, open your shell and give the variable name. So let me say name is my variable name, and let me say I want to give the name Sachin, which is my name, inside this double quote. So you can see inside this double quote we have passed something text inside here. That means this is a string. Like in many languages, it may be in the C, C#, or Java, we don't pass here semicolon to end the statement. In the case of Python, you'll simply pass nothing over here. In order to see the output, or basically the content of that variable, you simply give the name and it will show us a content. If you want to give or make a integer variable, let me say I want to make the math variable which will contain 8, and if I want to see the content of a math variable, simply pass the name as a math and you will see the content as 8. If you want to give the math variable the same variable but with the different value 8.9, then it will be changed directly to 8.9. So this is the dynamic programming in the Python. That means we can assign any value in the Python and it will be valid, which is not in the case of Java or any other high level languages. And Python being a dynamic type language, it will be just valid in the Python. So you can make different variable over here. So you can make a boolean type. So let me say honest variable, and if I say true, so make sure that T is capital over here, because we have seen in the case of keywords. So this is basically a keywords, and keywords are a case sensitive, so that means this T has to be capital. If you make something like true, this won't be valid. And if you make something like, let me say again, honest is true, this is the boolean type. If you want to see the class or what is this type of honest, and it will show us a bool, which means this is a boolean. If you want to see this type of the math, which is obviously the float, and if I say math type, it will show us a float. So float is basically a decimal, which is basically, you can see the content of the math over here, which is 8.9, which is the decimal. So float is for the decimal. If you want to see the type of the name, you will see it will show us a string. So if I say type of the name, it will give us a class as a string. So type is another function or a method that is going to show us a data type. So we have now studied about the string, which is inside this double quote. Anything that is inside this double quote is a string. If you type something like, let me say, hey, I am, then this is also a string. So anything that is inside this double quote, or it can be also the single quote, hey, hello, everything that is inside this single quote or double quote is your string. Another is your number. So anything that is 5 or 6 or any number, so that is your number. And next thing is your basically this boolean would be true or false. So you can see we have seen a bunch of fundamental data types over here. So let me save this first. So we have a bunch of fundamental data types. So we have seen about the integer, string, and boolean in this lecture. We have to explore further data structures in the upcoming lecture, but for now you can see we can also do multiple assignments to the variable. So we have seen how to create the variable. It won't be something like starting with var, or starting with integer, or starting with string. It won't be in the case of the Python. In order to create the variable in Python, it is really easy. You have to simply give the name of the variable, and let me say I want to create the integer variable having the health of the character to be 90. So this is your variable. So if you want to check the health, the content of the health, you simply pass the name and you will see the content is 90. So this is the way to create the Python variable. If you want the multiple assignment to the variable, that means if you want to create variable a, b, and c, if you want to create variable a, b, or c, so it should be here a, b and c. And if you want to have the multiple assignment to this variable, instead of just creating one, you can just pass here something like 5, 7, or if you want to just pass a string here saying hey, then you can do this. And now if you want to just check the value a, b, c, you can see it is 5, 7 and hey. If you want to see a variable, it is 5, b is 7, and if you see c, it will contain hey. So this is the multiple assignment to the variable, or basically the multiple variable. So we have a rule or naming convention to create the variable in the constants in all programming language, and that is the camel case. So if you want to create the variable name, make sure it makes a sense, because if you want to give the player character name, and if you just create the variable a, and if you say the player name this, so this doesn't make any sense. If you just see a, so it would make sense for you, but if you see that other programmers are using the same code of yours, they won't think that this variable a represents the player name. So make sure that every variable makes a sense. So if you say that name like this, or name of player, and give the player name, this will make really sense. So anyone will see your code will just think like, okay, this is the name of a player, and that will get the more sense to the other coder too, or maybe for yourself too, if you just go to the code back after a long time. So next one is to use the camel case. So camel case is really important notation to declare the variable, and it starts with the lowercase. So if you want to say create the name with the my age, so I'll say 89, and if I just print my age, then it is saying 89 over here. So this is your camel case that starts with the small or lowercase, and after basically one symbol or letter, you'll just make with a capital letter. So as to specify, these are the two words. So if you just end with, let me say, my and address, so after this one word, you start with the uppercase for the first letter, and you go with all the lowercase, and you just give your address. So this is the way or convention which will make much more sense, or basically will be more attractive when you just make your variable name. So next thing is to just use the capital letter whenever possible to declare a constant. So if you want to create the pi variable, which will be 3.14, it should be all in uppercase. This is the way to create the constants. So you can also see the gravity. If you see this gravity 9.8, this is your constant, which is in the uppercase, all in uppercase. And never make use of a special symbol in the case of making the variable. So making like my has is and 90, this is not valid. This is not valid in the case of Python. Never make use of a special symbol while creating the variable. So a special symbol can be like this exclamation mark, @ hash sign, or basically the $sign. All of these special characters are not valid, or the percentage, modulo sign, this won't be valid in the case of the Python, because all of these had the special meaning in Python. So this modulo is for the division, and this $sign and this hash for the comment, this all have the special meanings, so you can't make use of this in the variable name. So next thing is that you do not have to start your variable with the digit. So if I say 9 my name, and if I say hey, this is not valid, because you can't have the variable that is started with the digit. Next one is that we have to put the constants in the separate module, and we'll learn about that in the upcoming lecture. But for now, just remember, for the constants, it better is to make a simple Python file where you can have all of the constant sorted in that file, and we'll make use of that file as a constant file, and we'll import and use in the different file. So these are the type of basics and the naming convention that we have to follow while creating the variable name, and that is to make much more sense while creating the variable and working with the logic in the upcoming lecture. But for now we'll see about the type conversion. So I'll just open this demo file, and or basically we'll just go with the cell and I'll show you here. So let me clear this first, or let me just close out and open the new terminal or new cell. And now here all you need to do is, first of all, let me say input command. So input is going to input you something. So I'll say enter your age. So I'll just say this, enter your age, and let me say that it should be inserted in the variable name age. I have created the variable age, and with this input command, so same as print command, this input command is going to input, because this is also a method that is going to input. So print is basically consoling out, and print input is basically inputting out. Your commands are basically what you just pass here. So if I say enter your age, and if I say 56 is my age, and if I hit enter, and if I say this age, you could see that we have entered here that is integer, but it has reflected out as a string. So I have already told you in the before lecture that anything is inside this double quote is a string, and if you see that is this 56 is the integer. So if I say type, which is the method to check that, if I say 56, then it will get you a string, which is a string. So if I say type only 56, now it will show us a string, basically integer, because this is an integer. But if you just input here that is 56, the age that was integer, which was inputted as an integer, has been converted into the string, which is done by this input method. So now all you need to do is type conversion, or typecast this integer to our string to the integer, because we want 56 not as a string but an integer. So in order to do that, we have the couple of method for the type conversion. If I say is, and now you can see that this is, which was integer, which was a string, has passed into this int method to be converted from a string to the integer. If I hit enter, now this is, which was a string, has been converted to the integer. If you want that back, that is basically I will say is integer and age. So let's go back, and now if I say is now integer, but if you want to roll back to the string now again, you can do something like is str, which is another method to convert integer to the string or anything other to the string. So if I say enter again and see the age, it has been now typecasted to the string again, which was integer before, has been type converted or typecasted to the string. So these are the type conversion method which is done implicitly over here, which is converting integer to the string, string to the integer. We can also do boolean to string in this same manner, and this is the way to just perform some of the operations. In the next lecture we'll see output formatting, and we'll see how format method can be used in the next lecture. See you in the next one.